Hello. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at our first lesson in our unit on expressions, right? So first off, we're going to talk about how to evaluate them. All right, so the very first thing we need to do is we need to talk about this order of operations, PEMDAS, which you've probably run into in the past, right? It's usually, you see it written out, just as PEMDAS, just kind of in order like that. So we're going to talk about what each one of those is, like what is it that we're looking for on each step of this. Right, so the P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses. Right, so parentheses are when you have, things that look like that in your problem. They might also look like this. They might look like this, right? So you can kind of think of them as, when you have like a group of something that's specifically put together in parentheses, that's what you want to start with. You want to just like jump into those and take care of whatever it is. After that, the E is for exponents. All right, so what an exponent is when you have something like 2 to the third power, right? It's that 3 that's the exponent, right? So, or, it might even have something like 7 to the 14th power, right? Something really gross like that, in which case, use a calculator, right? We don't need to figure that out on our own. Right? But exponents are those little numbers hanging out on the shoulders of other numbers, right? What an exponent is telling you to do, and we'll take a look at that 2 to the third one, right, is it's telling you how many of that number you have that are multiplying each other, right? So if I have 2 to the third power, that's really 2 times 2 times 2, right? 3 different 2's all being multiplied together. If it was 2 to the fourth, I'd add times 2 onto the end of that, and it would be 4 2's. Right? M is for multiplication. Right? And when you're doing multiplication, especially in algebra, right, your multiplication sign is either going to look like a dot or as a little star, right? We do not want to use just X, right, for multiplication. Right? We are not going to use that as a multiplication sign because that's going to stand in as a variable most of the time. Right? You might have a problem where you don't use X. You might use A's, B's, and C's, right? But you still don't want to use the X because the confusion could still be there, right? So just that star or the dot for multiplication is what you're looking out for. The D is for division. Right? So when you're dividing, you got this regular old division symbol with the dots on the top and bottom, right? You might just have a slash. Or what you might have is just an actual fraction, right? So like some number up top and some number on the bottom, right? Because fractions at their base are just division. That's all you're doing is you're dividing one number by another, right? So division can take any one of those forms when we're doing our order of operations. After that, we want to do addition. That's what the A stands for, right? In addition, there's no fancy stuff. It's just plus sign. Right. After addition comes subtraction. Right, and again, no fancy alternate symbols or anything like that. It's just addition and then subtraction. So we have this little note underneath all of these, right, where we want to work from left to right. All right, so if we go from left to right on the problem, right, then we're going to kind of, scan through with our eyes and notice, all right, do I have any multiplication to do? You scan through. All right, if I don't, then I'm going to check for division and then addition. Go one at a time. All right, so there are some special situations that we might have, right? So when we're working from left to right, we have some things that can alternate, right? So one of those things is multiplication and division can alternate. Right, and when I say alternate, that just means that they can come before each other in our process. So, if I had a problem where, I had multiplication and division in them, if the division comes first, right, reading it from left to right, if we run into the division first, we can do that first and then do the multiplication afterwards, right? That is an okay thing. So you can kind of think, if you wanted to add this onto here, is that multiplication and division are just kind of like one big step together, multiplication and division, right? Down here, we have another 2 that can swap, right? That would be addition and subtraction. All right, so again, if you run into some subtraction and then there's addition later in the problem, you can do the subtraction first. In fact, you should, right? You're just working from left to right. So again, I just put that little squiggly brace there, showing that addition and subtraction are kind of like one big step together. All right, so where we're going to be using a lot of this order of operations stuff is when we're evaluating expressions. All right, so the steps that we need to do in order to evaluate these things, all right, is that we need to start off by saying, all right, we're going to substitute numbers in for variables. Right, so this is where you talk about like substitution. Right, we're plugging something in. We're replacing the variables with the numbers they're supposed to be. After that, we evaluate using our order of operations, our PEMDAS. All right. And as you go on to, other problems and stuff, it's not a bad idea if you just want to write the word PEMDAS at the top, just to remind yourself and say like, all right, did I do this? And then did I do this? Just take a look through. It's not going to hurt you. So we're going to flip a redo on to the next side of here. We're going to take a look at a problem. We're going to evaluate this expression using our order of operations. So again, the first step in evaluating, right, because that's what it's telling us to do here, is that we need to plug in a number for the variable. So this problem is saying 3x minus 4 when x is equal to 5. All right, so if x is equal to 5, that's what I'm going to have to replace the x with. So now this is 3, there's a 5 there, and then minus 4. So you're thinking to yourself, like, something about that doesn't look right. And if you're thinking that, then you'd be right. Right? There's something a little wrong. So whenever we're plugging in for a variable, especially when it's next to something else like this 3 and this x, we want to put parentheses around it. All right? Because what's actually going on there between that 3 and that x is that we're multiplying those two things. It's 3 times x. Right? So in this case, this is going to be 3 times 5 that we want to be able to show. So through doing the parentheses does that. All right, after that, we're then thinking through our order of operations, right? PEMDAS. PEMDAS. Right? Parentheses, all right, I'm looking in those parentheses and it's just a 5. I can't do anything, right? So I can move along. E is for exponents, which I don't have any of. Then we got multiplication and division. I do have some multiplication, right? So that 3 times that 5 is going to give us 15. Right? There's no division, there's no other multiplication, so we're good there. And then we got addition and subtraction. So there is some subtraction. 15 minus 4 is just 11. Right? And then we are done. Right? So what we need to do is we're just going to keep on going, actually. Right? That's it. We figured out what that's going to be when we plug in that 5. Right? So on this next one, it might look a little spooky, right? But it's going to be all right. This is x squared minus 7 when x is equal to 8. Right? So all we're going to do is we're going to start off again by plugging in that 8 for wherever the x was. Right, so it's going to be 8 in parentheses with a little 2 on it, minus 7. Right, so again, we're taking a look at things in order. Parentheses, it's just an 8. I can't do anything with it. Right? I'm looking at exponents afterwards. That 8 has a little 2 on top of it. That's 8 squared. Right? So that's telling me that I have 8 times a second 8 there. So 8 times 8 is 64. All right, so we'll take care of that step and bring everything down. All right, so that's parentheses done, exponents done. Multiplication and division, doesn't look like I have any. Addition and subtraction, I do have some of that. 64 minus 7 is going to leave us with 57. All right, and then that's all we need to do there. All right, so we do have quite a bit more to go. I'm just going to keep on cruising. If you have questions, it's okay to pause and go back and re-watch like an explanation here or there. Right? So on this one, it looks a little grosser, right? But at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same kind of deal. We're going to replace all those x's with 3's. Right? And you might notice that in this one, I didn't put parentheses around either one of those 3's. Right? There wasn't anything that was directly next to the x. Right? I guess you could argue that this first 3 has that 2 that's next to it. Right? And again, it's better safe than sorry in a lot of cases, but in this case, we don't need them. There's nothing directly next to them that would be affecting it. When I have 2 to the 3rd power, that's 2 times 2. Actually, hold on. Let me back up. See, it's easy to get sucked in and just kind of jump in. So, PEMDAS, thinking about my parentheses. If I'm looking in those parentheses, 1 minus 3, I can do that. Right? 1 minus 3 is negative 2. right? And again, you might notice I left it in parentheses, right? Because there's that other negative sign. We'll talk about that in just a second. After the parentheses are done, right, I can't do anything else with them. I'm then going to move on to the exponents. 2 to the third is telling me I have 3 2's all multiplying. So 2 times another 2 is all going to come out as 8. Right? And then last but not least, we got to take care of like multiplication, division, and then addition and subtraction. So we don't have any multiplication or division, right? But we do have some subtraction going on. So we're going to jump to that. I have 2 subtraction signs, right? It's 8 minus negative 2, right? If I wanted to get rid of those parentheses here, I could and just write it out like that. If you ever have a situation like this where you have 8 minus a negative number, right? If you're subtracting a negative, the negatives kind of cancel each other out, and you can treat it as a big plus sign. Right? So 8 plus 2 now, it's just going to leave us with 10. All right. So let's keep on going. What I'd like you to do is pause here, try this one out, see what you get, and then unpause and see if it matches what I get. So hopefully you gave that a shot. Right? I'm just going to go through and replace all those x's with 3's. And again, that last 3, I am putting parentheses next to it, or around it, because it's right next to that 2. Right? So when I'm looking through this, I've done that step. I can't do anything in that set of parentheses. There's nothing to be done. There's no exponents. And then I'm moving on to multiplication and division. So the first multiplication or division I see is this 9 divided by 3. 9 divided by 3 is just 3. Right? I can then keep moving my way through the problem, right? 2 times 3 is multiplication that we can do in this same step. That's going to be 6. Right, after that, addition and subtraction. 3 minus 3 is 0. Again, we're moving from left to right. And then 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Right, and then we're done. That's it. So we got a little bit more. I don't want to drag this video on for a full half hour or anything, so I'm going to kind of keep moving. Right, and if you need to look back at something, if you need to ask questions, it's perfectly okay. All right, so on this one, we are going to evaluate this awful-looking expression using our order of operations, except now there's x's and y's to worry about. So what we're going to do is we're going to be real careful on just this first step, and then it's the same kind of deal from there. This first step, we want to make sure that we are replacing the right variables with the right numbers. So that x was 9, so I'm making sure to replace that with 9. I'm then kind of continuing to write out the rest of the problem. And then that y was negative 6. So I'm putting that in there where the y was. All right, so if you have multiple variables, you just plug them in for where that variable is. All right, so there's a lot going on in this problem, so I'm actually just going to kind of focus us in on just that. So thinking order of operations. P for parentheses. I have lots of parentheses here, right? So let's talk about them one at a time. This set of parentheses with the 9, I can't do anything to, so that one's kind of done. I also have this big chunky set of parentheses there, right? And inside those parentheses, there's even more parentheses, right? So we want to start with the innermost parentheses first. I'm looking at these ones in particular, the ones in blue. That negative 6 in parentheses, I can't do anything with, right? So we're just going to kind of have to leave it alone, just like we did with the 9 at first, right? So now I'm looking at this set of parentheses as a whole. When I'm in there, I kind of want to restart my brain and do order of operations within those parentheses. So we just talked about the parentheses in those parentheses, right? We can't do anything with them. We don't have any exponents in there, but we do have some multiplication we can do, right? So that's going to be my next step, is I'm going to do this multiplication out underneath with that negative 4 and that negative 6, right? So what I would really suggest with a lot of these types of problems is take them one step at a time, do that step, and write out what you now have. Because otherwise it's real easy to get kind of tripped up and, make a mistake, combine things where you shouldn't and all that. When I do that multiplication there that's underlined, negative 4 times negative 6 is positive 24. Right? So now we're still working in this set of parentheses, right? And I'm looking and seeing all right, I now have some addition I can do. All right, so I'm going to do that 24 plus 5 which is going to give us 29 in there, right? And again, you can see that I'm carrying everything else down. I'm doing it one step at a time. So now that we've taken care of the parentheses, right, we don't have any other exponents. We now can do some multiplication and division. 8 times 9 is going to give us 72. 6 times 29 is going to be 174, which, I didn't just do that in my head. I plugged it into a calculator, so feel free to do that. Right, so no other multiplication or division. Now we can add and subtract, which is going to land us at 246 overall. Right? So I'm not going to try and lie to you and say like, oh man, wasn't that fun doing all that, right? But hopefully it doesn't seem like it was all that difficult, right? We plugged in our numbers, and then we did our order of operations, one step at a time. And again, I really can't stress how important it can be to, just do one step and write everything out, and then do the next step and write it out, and then one more step and write it out. Right? Don't try and jump through the steps, at least not for ones like these. I wouldn't do that either, right? It's important to write things out so you can keep track of where you are, right? Keeping on moving, right? What I'd like you to do is try this one out, right? Plug in these two variables, right? The x is equal to 3, the y is equal to 8, and then unpause when you think you got it, see if it matches what I did, right? If you want to use a calculator, perfectly fine. So hopefully you gave it a go. I'm just going to start by replacing all those variables with the numbers they're telling me about. All right, and that y was 8. All right. After that, again, I'm just going to focus in on just the problem because there's a lot of other stuff going on. So first things first is inside the parentheses. I'm going to take care of that multiplication kind of like on the last one. Negative 8 times positive 3 is a negative 24. Again, I'm bringing everything else down. Still in those parentheses, we've got negative 24 minus 7 more, which is going to bring us to negative 31. Right? If we're subtracting from a negative, we're getting further negative. All right, now we're done with parentheses. Nothing else I can do in those. There's no exponents. I have plenty of multiplication to do, though. 9 times negative 31 is negative 279. 5 times 8 is 40. And then we just add them together. That's going to give us negative 239 here. And that's it. And again, I'm not going to say, like, wow, that was fun, right? But hopefully it went kind of okay, right? Do one step at a time. I really can't stress it enough. All right, we got a couple last ones, right, with x's and y's. We'll kind of run through them real quick. If you want to pause here and try them both out and then unpause and see if you got them, then that's fine. If you want to follow along with me while I speed through them, then that's also fine. Right? So on this one, I'm just going to start off by plugging in those variables where they're supposed to go. 9, and then that was a negative 4 for the y. Right? So multiplication and division seems like where I got to start, right? Those parentheses can't do anything. There's no exponents. So negative 15 divided by 5 is going to land us at negative 3. Right? After that, again, we're thinking about multiplication and division as one big step all together. So now we have negative 9 times negative 4, which is positive 36. Then you can just add them together, right? Negative 3 plus 36 is 33. And that's it. Last one on here. And again, we've got x's and y's. Just going to start off by plugging them in. This is 7 plus 24 over that x, which was 8, minus 3 times that y, which was 6. All right, so we're going to have 7. Oops, let me talk through what I'm doing first. I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. Parentheses, can't do anything in them. Exponents, we don't have any. Multiplication and division, though, we got plenty of that. All right, so that first bit is 24 divided by 8. It's going to be 3. We also then have negative 3 times 6, which is negative 18. All right, again, multiplication and division as one big step. Then we're adding and subtracting, going from left to right. So 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 minus 18 is negative 8. All right, so I'm hoping this seems pretty all right. If you're feeling a little iffy on it, it's okay to ask questions, right? It's also okay to use a calculator on literally every single thing we're going to do this trimester, right? So if you're feeling a little iffy, try going back and rewatching a couple of these problem explanations, right? And if not, then, ask me when you see me during class. Right? And as for now, I'm going to let you go. Peace out.